It is not about monetizing mitzvah. It's making it feasible to be able to do so much more.
You have 4,000 people in your database. How many people have you set up?
We're at probably more than 50 couples.
50 couples that are dating.
When I was doing volunteer and people spoke to me like I worked for them, the way that people valued me had so much to do with the way that I valued and honored my work. You cannot expect a pat on the back once in a while when that is not sustainable.
If we can't create a model that somebody who's very talented in shidduchim can't do this for their full-time parnasa, that is something the community suffers a loss from.
This is a script that I have to rewrite. Judaism doesn't say that women should be martyrs, that women should be exhausted.
More and more kids getting older and older and they're not finding their person. We need to be able to bring more and more resources to be able to help them.
Physically, I just could not continue waking up to a million messages, trying to help everyone. It literally, I felt like I was jumping off a cliff. That's how scary it was for me.
If you've been enjoying Inspire to Lead and want to experience this community in person, JWE is hosting our annual conference on April 27th in Newark, New Jersey. This is where Jewish women in business come to dream bigger, reach higher, and power each other forward. As a thank you to our listeners, you can use the code PODCAST for $10 off your ticket. All right, let's jump into today's conversation.
Welcome to Inspire to Lead. We'd like to thank our friends at Roth & Co., innovators in accounting and business advisory, for making this conversation possible. We're coming to you from New York City. I'm your host, Talia Mashiach. Today, I'm joined by international matchmaker, Rivkah Fox. Rivka, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Talia. It is such an honor to be here with you, and it's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you. Okay, so first of all, we know each other. I am a huge fan. And also, Rivka set up my daughter, who just got married in March. And so,
wow.
Yeah, I engaged almost a year ago. It's almost their one-year engagement.
That's right, Hanukkah.
I know. Yeah.
A little bit before
No, it was on Hanukkah. Yeah, it was Hanukkah. In a few weeks, they're celebrating their one-year engagement, which is so crazy.
Oh my goodness.
So I had the opportunity to work with you as a shadchan, which I'm so excited. But I want to start by just letting you introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
Thank you, Talia. So I'm Rivkah Fox. I live in Philadelphia. I'm an international matchmaker. I set up Jewish people all over the world. Now we have marriages, thank God, in 8 countries. And I have 4 children. My oldest just had her bat mitzvah this weekend. My youngest is 4. My husband is a campus rabbi at University of Pennsylvania, and I am a full-time, round-the-clock professional matchmaker.
We're going to get into what that really means to be a professional matchmaker, but tell us more about your husband and your family, because you talk about it being a campus rabbi, but for especially anyone who follows your Instagram knows that you guys are on all the time, and you have a much bigger mission in your as a couple. So just share a little bit more about that.
I guess the context goes back a while to before I got married to my husband, but basically there's an organization called Maor, which is a college outreach organization that teaches Jewish students who have not had so much Jewish exposure, and many of them with no background, about Judaism, taking them to trips to Israel, teaching them Torah. And before my husband and I got married, my dad founded this organization, and my husband ended up being a student who became religious through this organization, Maor, when he was a student at Penn. And I grew up observant, Orthodox, from girl, and from the tri-state area. And fast forward, my husband and I met, got married, and my husband, who set out to be a businessman, he went to Wharton, ended up deciding after learning for a few years in Israel that he wanted to be a campus rabbi and go back to Penn, where it all started, and we call it the Rabbi Lin, Rabbi Shmuel Lin, who had makareved him, be the Rabbi Lin, who had then moved to Olami, Maor, Manhattan. So we moved to Philadelphia 2 years after we got married, so 11 years ago. We lived on Penn's campus for the first 2 years, and now we live in the suburbs right outside of the Philly city area. And we have 4 kids. We spend a lot of Shabbats on campus. If we're not on campus, we're at home hosting. And my kids have grown up only knowing a home that has college students over, a Shabbos meal where my children get to talk to students about what their majors are and what their lives are like at a university. And this is like a huge, huge part of our family and our whole life and everything that we do.
Did you think that you were going to marry, first of all, did you think you were going to marry a Baal Teshuva? And did you think that you were going to be like this home of kiruv?
So it wasn't like the furthest thing from my mind. I definitely didn't think that that would be like the first thing that I would marry. I probably imagined picture a guy maybe more similar to my own upbringing, but my dad is a Baal Teshuva, and he has a very, very similar path to my husband. And our home also was very, very open to people who had this kind of path like my husband did, becoming religious a lot later on in life. So it was not something foreign to me, and something that like I grew up with and I really, really value and respected. And when my husband was suggested to me, my dad loved my husband. He knew him from like Maor and from just being involved in the organization. And my dad got to know a lot of the students really, really well, especially when the organization was like very new and my husband was one of the earlier students. And my husband, when my husband was suggested by a mutual friend, I mentioned it to my dad. And my dad said, Rivka, that's a great guy. You must go out with Rick.
Oh, wow.
And so that's really, so it wasn't like foreign, but it definitely wasn't something that was like a given that I was going to be, marrying someone who grew up completely differently than I did, I was like in a Beis Yaakov Muncie. My husband was like at a fraternity at Penn. He didn't know how to read Hebrew at that point. So it definitely was out of the box, and I'm very, very grateful to have found him.
He's so great. He's
amazing.
I mean, at the little that I know him, but I could tell about his personality, he's like so special, which is incredible.
Baruch Hashem, he's an incredible, incredible guy.
So I want to ask a little bit, because obviously that's fascinating even for him to have invested all of those dollars in Ivy League schools, to thinking he was going to be a big businessman, to give all of that up for kiruv. But I also know that you also are highly educated. So just let's take you back. I want to go back a little bit to your upbringing. You talked about it, and I know that you get to go to Israel often and your family is incredible. So tell us about your own family, your upbringing. It sounds like your father really also, he became religious, but he created a very successful career as well, and how you grew up. And tell me just a little bit about what your upbringing was.
Okay, so my family, I grew up one of 8, middle child, guilty of middle child syndrome over here. My dad is Baal Teshuva, grew up really secular in Northern California. He went to a Catholic private school. He was taught by nuns and priests when he was in high school. He has a really, really cool story how he went on a trip. He got a ticket that basically he can fly around the world as long as he goes in one direction over the course of a year. And he decided to spend his time doing that after he graduated from undergrad. So after graduating from college, my dad went on this trip and he stopped in all these countries in the Middle East and Asia, and he learned about Buddhism and he learned to speak different languages. And when he got to Israel for the very first time, he just felt this magnetic draw to the Kotel. And he has this cool story that he talks about. He ends up sleeping at the Kotel, in a sleeping bag. Rabbi Meir Schuster found him and took him to class. And so that's how my dad's story got started. My mom grew up modern Orthodox, child of a Holocaust survivor. After my dad was working already, my mom was working as a lawyer, and they were in their late 20s, and they met at a dating event, I think on Thanksgiving in Lincoln Square Synagogue. And then after they got married, they just kept growing and growing more in Judaism, and their whole mission was that they wanted to raise a big family that was just very, very Torah-oriented and with the goal of ending up in Israel one day. I think that was very much my parents' mission for us.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, so let's now talk a little bit about you as a matchmaker. So first of all, let's talk about, you are different than everything else. And I want to get into this a little bit because I am a huge supporter, as Rivka knows, of, really thinking about matchmaking and shidduchim differently than the way we've thought about it forever. And I've definitely encouraged Rivka to keep going and to think about things. And I also think there is a unique difference, and I think it's important for people to understand, between somebody that is a professional shadchan, which means that this is their career, this is their job, versus the volunteer shadchan. And I think it's amazing that we have people who are volunteering that are willing in their free time to try and help set people up. It's a huge, mitzvah, and it's amazing. But I really also think that it's important that we have professional matchmakers, shadchanim, that can see that they have a talent and could turn it into a parnasa for themselves. But in doing that, we as a community need to shift our mindset that we can't expect the professional shadchanim that are doing this full time and want to make it a parnasa to have the same economics that we have our volunteer shadchanim do. And I think that that's something that I've been talking about over the last few years. I know it's something that you are really educating the market and doing things that are unique and different. And I just want to share why I think that's so important, is because we know that we need more people willing to do, it's a hard job. And being a matchmaker, being a shadchan is a hard job. It's a lot of dedication and work. And we need more people willing to do this. And those who are really good, we need them becoming a shadchan, not going and becoming a executive assistant. And if we can't create a model that somebody who's very talented in shidduchim can't do this for their full-time parnasa, then we will lose them to whatever other job there is. And that is something that the community suffers a loss from. And so that's why I think it's so important. But then we have to shift our mindset as a community to support and differentiate between women and men that are volunteer shadchanim and that are full-time professional shadchanim. And I think that can really help us. I know we talk about it as a shidduch crisis, but I really just think that it's about the experience that people have when they're in shidduchim, because there's not enough shadchanim and they feel like another number, and they feel like, I have to follow up. Because it's a volunteer service for so many people. But if you look at it like you're a professional and you're a client of somebody's, then there's different expectations. And so I want to get into this conversation a little bit because you know how passionate I feel about it. But I want to share sort of how you view it and what you're doing.
Wow. Talia, so much to unpack, and you were able to articulate a lot into a few sentences. Talia you and I went through a journey together from kind of trying to figure out what this is, how matchmaking, being a shadchan, can be sustainable. And we've evolved so much since the very beginning. And for me, at least, there was a lot of pain and a lot of strain and a lot of exploration involved because there was no simple answer. And I think it also represents a bigger struggle that many women, especially many Jewish women, deal with, and the struggle of, I'm doing a mitzvah, there are expectations from me from religious women, from my community, from my family, from my kids' schools, from what we see a religious woman, what they're supposed to be like. There's so much of this expectation, and it's built into our subconscious. And I'm talking for my friends and the people that I speak to and the people that I see and the conversations that I have with women who have so many things on their plate. And then this idea of making something professional feels so uncomfortable because it breaks the script of, but I'm doing chesed, but I'm a rebbetzin, or I'm a real community member, or I'm a team player. And it breaks that script that we have really in our DNA of we're a religious woman and we have to step up to the plate. And I think that's a struggle that so many women have. It almost feels like we're betraying our people by monetizing or becoming professional or having boundaries. And from the journey that I've gone through with you, and the research and the questions that I've asked myself and the mentors that I've spoken to, I realized that this is a script that I have to rewrite, because Torah Judaism doesn't say that women should be martyrs and that women should be exhausted, or that chesed involves making everyone happy. And it really, really pushed me to explore this whole topic. And it was very uncomfortable in the beginning. It was a real working.
When you say uncomfortable, like the concept of charging people to be their shadchan, or like talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So going professional, so charging people and saying, I have a business model for something that's so widely viewed as a mitzvah, where there are so many volunteers doing it. People's reactions, people being taken aback. I think also the idea that what I'm doing and trying to matchmake is really essentially give people happiness, and I am making people very, very disappointed. So there's this huge element of, well, what am I doing if I'm, giving people disappointment and I'm coming off as like standoffish, or, people will get offended by a business model that doesn't sit right with this mitzvah and this chesed and their kids in need. And for them, it's a really, really emotional process that they're going through, and such a need in Klal Yisrael, and we're all aware of it. And then I'm going to have a professional model where I'm going to charge, I'm going to disappoint, I'm going to have critics. And going through that process was very, very uncomfortable.
Which makes total sense. And I know I was along.
You were a huge mentor, Talia. You got me through this. There were a few times that I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted, or I just feel like completely depleted, or I've just hit some very hard emotional roadblocks. And Talia, you've really, really gotten me through those in a major, major way. And I'm so grateful. I really don't think that I would be in this place if not for the mentorship, and if not for the steps and the holding my hand and the support and the guidance. The very first step that I took toward this professional model was like, you were like, Rivka, you've been sharing with me. We became good friends while I was setting up Orly. And you said to me, Rivka, like, it sounds like you've been dealing with so much more than you can handle, and so much demand, and you have your kids, and how do you have time for this? And you said to me, Rivka, you need an assistant and you need a website. And I was like, huh? But like, yeah, I do. But like, who does that? Like, I'm just a community matchmaker, but I'm also trying to help people on a global scale. So like, I need that, but it doesn't fit into this model that I envision of what I'm doing. So you were really that first push.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think also I want to open people's mind with this conversation to maybe thinking differently and understanding. So that would be a perfect example. So the complaints come from, which is understandable. It's a very emotional, difficult time.
Yeah.
And for parents and for daters, I like to call singles daters, they reach out to shadchanim and they feel like another number. I mean, these are things people say, like, I feel like another number, I'll reach out and then they won't call me back. And how often should I follow up? I don't want to feel like I'm bugging them. And then the experience almost becomes like this, I don't want to say, for some people, a shameful experience. It's a humbling, you ask a lot of parents, they're like, this is such a humbling experience. Parents who are able to, get their kids into any school by calling, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, the phone isn't ringing and this shadchan isn't calling me back, and they're not used to it, and it's like, wait, why does this feel so different than anything else I've ever experienced before? And part of that is like the model that we've built as a community, totally based on volunteer shadchanim, but then you have to take a step back and be like, what are you expecting from a volunteer shadchan? Like, first of all, they have to have a parnasa for their family, okay? So maybe there's a handful these days where one spouse can afford to support the whole family and the other could be a shadchan for completely a mitzvah. Okay, great. But that's like more and more rare that's a possibility within the demands of what we have as a community. So now what are we left with? We're either left with women who are part-time, which means they come home from a long day, they have all their families, and now they're trying to ret shidduchim in the evening, like, and from that experience, like, it's exhausting. You're dealing with emotion, you're dealing with so much. There's only so much. So if they have 100 people reaching out, are they going to be able to get back to more than 5 or 6 at night? No, it's impossible. And so that doesn't work. That's not going to create. So then the alternative is, all right, we want people to be spending more time on shidduchim. Okay, well, they need to be able then to afford to do that, right? And then they need to, and we talk about like any other business, they want to scale, which is where it goes back to how can you talk and help more than 10 people a day or 20 people, right? When there's thousands that are reaching out to you, well, then you need, just like any other business, you need to hire other people, you need to create systems, you need to create technology. And, so sometimes we're like, oh, that's not how it was always done. And I'm sure you experienced this, right? But it's like, well, you can't sit and we have to fix something. We have to try something different because what we have isn't working. So let's try something different. But then everyone has to be open to understanding that if we're doing something different, then it's also going to be different in terms of the expectations from them. If you want to go from volunteer to professional, you're not going to get that for free. It's impossible. We don't have, as a community, a way in which to be able to support full-time shadchanim, nor should we, right? And I, could go into like, we don't, with Rabbanim, with everything else, there's no other role in our community where we expect people to do something completely for free full-time. People do it for volunteer part-time. We don't have an expectation that someone does it completely full-time for free, and it doesn't work. So when we go now and talk about how you started to say, okay, how can I serve more people? Because you're so talented. You've set up so many people. You're so, like, your personality in terms of dealing with daters is so chill and everyone loves working with you. So it's like you had this huge demand. So then that was our conversation. And I was like, you need to scale. Like, you need to figure out how to hit more people. You're so talented. How do we do that? So that kind of brings it up on my side of where I was at the table with you thinking, here's somebody who's so talented. How do I help her think about this as a business model so that we can help more people?
Thank you so much, Talia. You're so sweet, so sweet. And really, you believing in me and just pointing out to me even when I was so exhausted and depleted and probably not on my A game, just that how much I could do and how there are other solutions and it can be supported, like that gave me so much throughout this journey that we've been through. It's interesting that you pointed out that really in our community, shadchanim are the ones who are in this interesting predicament that it's not a professional business model, it's volunteer, there's only so much volunteer, and there's that expectation. I just want to add one thing that I think as a kiruv rabbitin, I have a lot of friends, their husbands are also either in kiruv, rabbanas, community rabbitins, and people who are in that kind of position as well. I feel like there's no clear-cut boundaries, and I hear of a lot of overwhelm because there's so much expectation. You're the rabbitin, so you're the go-to. Do they necessarily have hours or a salary for that? Are people aware of, their own struggles or the children and the things that are on their back and what that might demand from them? So I think that that's also just a wider problem in terms of, or a wider challenge in terms of this kind of expectation that we have from people. And then when women set up boundaries or they say like, no, I can't do that chesed, or I don't want to host a Shabbaton or do X, Y, and Z, and how that's looked at and kind of doesn't fit this kind of image that we have of this from woman who loves chesed and takes care of people, and we're warm and we're nurturing, and that's what a from woman is, especially people who are in some sort of giving role. And then outside of our family, it's awkward if all of a sudden, we have to change and put up those boundaries and segue into like a little bit of different way that we deal with the people in our lives. And I think that's a struggle that many women, broadening up the shidduch conversation to more positions in our firm community. Yeah.
Which I love. I love that. I didn't even think about it. So you're bringing something up that I honestly haven't thought about. So I also wonder how many other people have thought about it. And the expectations that they have of the role of a rebbitzin, because she is expected to lead.
Totally.
And she's expected to be available. And I really wonder how much we take a minute to think about, what are they getting paid, if anything? And what are we expecting from them? And is that reasonable? And would we do that for ourselves? I think the other thing is that you always want to make everybody happy. And I think this is general, and I think women especially, we're like people pleasers and as a nature, totally. And especially probably people who are Rebbitzins, and there's so many difficult things, and everyone has their own need and story, and like you want to help everybody, but you can't do everything for everyone, or you'll deplete yourself.
Totally.
And when, like, can you say no, or you're not available, and you're going to have people that are upset with you, and you're just going to have to be okay with not making everyone happy, because that's if you set yourself up that my job is to make everybody in my community happy, you're never gonna be successful.
Totally.
So how do you set like reasonable goals, and how do we bring awareness from a community perspective on what our expectations are of like a Rebbitzin in our community, and then obviously going of a shadchan that is helping us.
So I had a interesting conversation with someone that was really a very pivotal moment for me in terms of when I went from volunteer figuring things out to professional. I knew already that things were not working for me. I was exhausted, and I knew that physically I just could not continue waking up to a million messages, trying to help everyone. People were upset because people are going through such a hard time, not upset at me necessarily, but I'm basically retaining people's emotions and holding on to so much, and then I'm distracted from my kids, and it wasn't sustainable, and I knew I physically couldn't continue that way. And there's a guy who, through Penn and through Maor, that we were very close to, and he's a brilliant guy. He's a professor at Wharton, and I said to him, do you have, where I'm at, I'm just so depleted, do you have any maybe professional mentor, or maybe I can speak to you, or someone that you can recommend in terms of just how to deal with being a woman, being in the space of volunteering, this cultural expectation of a mitzvah, and also needing to help support and make it financially sustainable. And he said to me, Rivka, I have this amazing, amazing coach for you. She's really expensive. Do like a one-time thing with her. You're going to get a lot out of it. She coaches like CEOs for Fortune 500 companies. Just have one session with her. And I got so much out of that session. I can't even tell you. I have the recording of it, and she was so direct and so to the point. She's not Jewish, and in a way it was good because she didn't have the same kind of, I guess, baggage or biases that we have around mitzvah, but she also got what I was talking about with the cultural expectation. And she looks at me and she says, Rivka, are you a volunteer or are you a business? And I was like jumping gymnastics around the question. I was like, both. Like, I want to be able to serve people, and I want to be able to make money, and I help people doing it, and this is my model up till now. And, people pay shadchanas after a match goes through, and some people, send me gifts, and I get flowers every Shabbat from many people. And she was like, you have to decide, are you a volunteer or a business? And if you are a business, you cannot expect that you're just going to get a pat on the back once in a while when you do a good job. That is not sustainable. So eventually, reluctantly, she got me to a place where I said, okay, I'm a business. And then she said to me right away, she said, well, the number one thing that business owners know is that you are going to have critics, and not everyone is going to be happy with you. And that was like terrifying, because my whole thing is I'm finding people love and happiness. My whole thing is to find people happiness. So that was like a huge thing for me to grapple with. And
that it's a mitzvah.
And that it's a mitzvah. Right. And a mitzvah doesn't necessarily mean, bringing everyone happiness or being, pleasing and for everyone, and kind of what my goal is. And she basically pushed me into that spot where I said I'm a business model. And she said, well, right now you're not operating like a business model. She gave it to me. She's like, before your meeting, Rivka, I looked you up. You had no LinkedIn. She's like, what you're telling me about your system right now sounds like awful. She gave it to me, but I needed it. Yeah. I was like shaking for like 24 hours after, but it pushed me so much to get a system that works, that I can work with everyone within, because I told her, I said, I really don't want to be a matchmaker business model that's just We see a lot more in like the secular circles, like for elite matchmaking, just for people who are, in certain brackets. And I really want to be able to work with everyone, and I want it to be sustainable. So kind of coming up with a model where I'm able to work with all different types of people and have a tiered system. And yes, people are going to be thrown off and people are going to be disappointed, but overall, it's been really, really well received, my system, and respected. And one of the shocking things my assistant said to me, she said, Rivka, she was concerned. She's like, you're really, when people email for an appointment time, you're going to send them like a link with the payment and you're going to tell them that you charge. And are you sure? No one does that. And she was like concerned for me. And after we did that, there was like an uptick. So many people signed up and people respected my time so much more. I would get on the phone when I was doing volunteer and people spoke to me like I worked for them. Like, I need to talk to you for an hour about this, about that. Can you come meet me here? And like, the way that people valued me had so much to do with the way that I valued and honored my work and the way that I approached it and that I had these boundaries and time limits and hours and pricing. And for the most part, people really, really adjusted very well to it.
But and also though, that now that they're hiring you, there's a different service that you could provide to them versus when you were doing it for free. And I think people want that because they're used to it, and everything else is
Sure.
like, they are used to being, if they pay for something, they get that attention and that time. And it's like, do you expect a therapist to that you're going to go to an appointment and you get it for free? No, you expect that you pay for an hour, you go to your coaching session or your therapy session, they give you that time, and then you can't reach them 24/7. You can't, there's just
Totally.
so it's shifting a mindset, I think, for people that have had these unreasonable expectations, in my opinion, of what volunteer shadchanim should do for them that they don't expect in anything else. And because it's a mitzvah, okay, but there's a lot of things that are a mitzvah, but we still pay people in our community because it's not sustainable. And I think you and I had a conversation that you also, if you couldn't turn this into a way to be a parnasa for your family, then you weren't going to be able to do it. So
Right.
it was like, and we would lose you, right, for our community in terms of being able to put the time that you've been putting in. So that's also where people have to understand that we need to have a model that allows for amazing people who are willing to do this voluntarily, and they should continue to do it, and it's a big mitzvah to do it. But we also think that it's amazing to have people girls who are sitting in high school today that are really good at this, that they can say, I can grow up and become a professional shadchan and
Totally.
set up so many amazing people and help our community, and it could be a parnasa for my family, and I don't have to be like completely spent by everybody else because I could put boundaries around it. Like, that will help our community in the long run, not just our community to have more resources, but it'll change the experience. And this is a big thing that you and I spoke about. Change the experience. People can choose a different experience. I speak especially to girls, but boys also, on what their current experience is with shadchanim. And like, I don't like working with shadchanim. Boys are like, they're this, and girls say they're that. They don't get back to me. It's like, and they feel like almost hopeless. And it's like, that's not how it should be. Just like anything else, there should be choices. If you want to work with a volunteer shadchan and you understand that means that when they're available, they'll call you. When they're available, they get back to you. That's what volunteer means. Then you can choose that. But that we also have the choice as a community for those who want a different service, right? And I want to touch, because the pushback on that is, well, then it becomes that the people who have money to be able to pay shadchanim get a better, experience, or they'll get married faster or whatever else than those that can't afford it. And so you and I talked about that also. So
Yeah.
I want you to answer kind of how do you deal with that type of objection?
Okay, so since like day one, I've been trying to set up, every Jewish person that's marriage minded that comes my way, regardless of background. And I have a real soft spot for people who grew up not religious and probably don't have the same kind of parental support that many people grow up with in our frum community. What I was realizing also before I did the professional model is that, if people are all coming from different cultural backgrounds and understandings, and there were people who were not exposed to the understanding of shadchanis the way that people maybe in more yeshivish circles have that. And there are, different locations and different reasons why people will see things differently. What I was thinking that like, I want to help everyone. It would be amazing if the people who could afford it, would pay generously for their shadchan, and then I'm able to do pro bono for everyone else. But to have a system that's not, I guess, very clearly structured, it just doesn't work. Like, you can't just like hope that it's going to end up working out, and it wasn't just working out. But now with the structure that I have, I'm able to, and I do a lot of, I'm setting up people all the time who are not paying me, who I met, who I know, who this, who that. And my system is that basically I have a VIP tier where I don't take on that many, and it's not something that's for everyone, and I work closely with them. And it also enables me to be able to speak with many, many other people. And then I have intake calls, which isn't a client per se, but it's something that's affordable enough for most people to be able to do a one-time phone call followed by a very, very thorough search. And I feel like a tremendous responsibility toward those people who put forth that investment, and I give them the time and the search and keep them in mind, although they're not a client. But there's different ways that I try and include everyone and make it something that's accessible for everyone.
And I'm smiling as you're saying that because I remember when your search was, let me look through my WhatsApps a long time ago. And when I let me think, and a lot of people are run that way, or they have like some shadchanim have like a spreadsheet on like Rivka. If you're going to be able to help more people and you could charge, and this is also the benefit of turning into a business, like now you can spend some money on getting some technology. You can, the assistant, which makes a huge difference for you because you were doing all of these tedious things.
I can't even imagine now to work without my database.
Yeah.
There's like close to 4,000 people in the database now. I have a tech person working on an AI element also, and it's changed everything, like the scope and the scale. And back to like charging for doing a mitzvah, it really just enables to do so many more mitzvot, to set up so many more people, to be able to keep it sustainable. So, it's not, the way that I see it is not about like monetizing mitzvah. It's making it feasible to be able to do so much more.
Like, and I know I see on, I know I can know everything going on with Rivka because
I love it.
Of her Instagram, and I love watching your creative ideas. Like, I want to talk a little bit about that you've changed also, not just in the way that saying we should do having a business model to this and investing and having assistants and employees and technology, which obviously costs money, but also just your creativity around it. So I want talk to us a little bit about that and how you've incorporated some like more modern approaches.
So I think this is like this kind of like helps to portray, like, I guess, where I'm coming from. And like my grandfather, my father's father, he was a world-renowned architect, and he has like books published through Stanford Publishing, and one of his like big mottos was, whatever you're doing, have fun. And like, you can't be successful at anything if you're not having a blast while doing it. So I think it's so fun to have the element of switching things up, having a wild side, letting your personality be a part of the profession. People love it because people have fun if you're having fun, and there's so much emotion and kind of rigidity and nerves around matchmaking. And it all happened very, very organically, this fun element. A few years ago, my friend and I posted anonymous bios on my Instagram. We asked if people were interested in like going out with these people. We had a couple set up from it. They ended up getting married. It was like unusual, not done then. We started doing more things like that, like let's have the public vote on which dater should go out with which dater, and the winning combination will go on a sponsored date. They ended up getting married. And just kind of one evening saying, whoever wants to sign up for a video call tonight with someone that I'll match you up with spontaneously. And they're all things that like were not planned, didn't take a lot of time on the front end, just things that keep it fresh, keep it fun. I have a guy now who reached out to me yesterday. He said, Rivka, I know you do these fun games. I'm going to a very exclusive Hanukkah party, and for security reasons, I can't say what the place is. And I want you to find me a blind date to come with me. And like, that's something that, and we just got like thousands of suggestions for him. People call me up. They say, I have extra sports tickets. Can I give them to you? Can I donate them to you? And you'll get like, you know, a blind date or someone who hasn't had a date in a while to get out on a date tonight. And these things just make it so much fun. And also, we're doing this in like every bracket of the different religious sectors. So like, it's not just like for people who generally meet guys and girls on their own. It's also more in the circles of people who are waiting for the shadchan to call, but now can be an active participant in the process and not just have to be passive and waiting in their home, but getting involved, and constantly coming up with new things like that. And it's just super, super fun.
I love it. It is fun, and it makes it a little bit more relaxed, and it's changing. Like you're seeing, just even, I know, again, I've married off 4 kids now, but it's like, oh, people who do that are like that. The people who would do something like that would not be someone that I would date, but it's becoming more and more like acceptable to not just be the old rigid system. Like
Totally.
It's such a great example in general of taking something that was always done a certain way and turning it on its head a little bit and saying like, we could do something different. And especially since everybody's complained about the old system. So as for me, as like an entrepreneur and as an innovator, and I'm like an action-oriented person, right? So if I hear this is wrong and this is wrong and this is a problem, okay. But then the same exact way you've tried to solve it for the last 20 years, you're doing it again, the same thing, and it didn't work. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So how do you try to do something different? How do you try to innovate? And like you said, there are going to be the people that are completely uncomfortable about that and will criticize, how could you do that? You know, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And my thing is like, you don't know what's going to happen. So let's try it. And you know, I was involved in this like project where we did a pilot of really taking this to another level and learning from it. And a lot of people were definitely objected to it, but then I would say back, like, look, let's try it.
Totally.
Like, you have to try stuff.
Totally.
Don't be scared to try things. And everyone gets so into like, what's going to be wrong and what's going to happen. And it's like, no, like, let's try it. And I think that open-mindedness is what, and the ability to have the courage to do something different is what is going to help us like evolve.
I agree. But back to what you were saying about how, you know, there are those people and the what ifs and the worries. And it's also been a process of like being resilient to push back and trying to like keep my own vision, even when, you know, there's naysayers. It's funny that you were just saying that because I got a message today on I posted the Hanukkah party with this bachelor guy in my WhatsApp status, and I got a lengthy message this morning while I was on the train on my way here, a guy just saying, I need to mute your WhatsApp status because it really rubs me the wrong way, the way that you're commercializing dating, and a long thing. And it used to bother me so much more, these messages. I'd just be like, oh my gosh, I offended someone, and did I do it wrong, and maybe I shouldn't have done it, and it used to be so hard for me. My dad's been really helpful as like a mentor with this, and he says to me, he's like, Rivka, how many, people have you set up? How many people are going out now? He said, we're gonna put this in the 0.001%. And so now, like, I've gone through it, and when the message popped up this morning, I was like, 0.001%. Like, it's okay.
That is
and making mistakes is okay.
That is an amazing piece of advice, not just for this, but for everything, because you'll never be successful if every little thing someone tells you.
Totally.
But it also goes back to this mentality. It's like you're commercializing it. Okay, so what? Then I would love to see. I don't know. We've had. I'm like, I'd go back to be like, and what are you doing then to help change the situation? There's so many people that are struggling with dating. What are you doing that's different? Okay, everyone likes to complain, but they don't come solutions.
Totally.
Like I wish, like, next person that complains to you, can you just say, thank you for the feedback. I'd love to hear what your solutions are. Like, as a boss, I always
with pleasure.
I just like, as a boss, when anyone comes to me with like, everyone loves to come with like, this is what's wrong with something. Everyone in my company knows they never come to me with something that's just wrong. They have to come to me with the solution as well.
I love that.
So like you've got to make a rule. If you're reaching out to Rivkah Fox to complain, give her the solution also.
I love that. That's genius. That's great.
And then they stop. Right?
Because
then I think it also forces someone to reflect, like, wait, I'm criticizing or I'm saying what's wrong, but it's not like I have a better idea. So then hopefully I better think of a better idea.
Totally.
And then they're just like those people. So I want to also, it was interesting when you were telling me about people donate the tickets and things, like there's the mitzvah coming in, right? Like,
totally.
So, and there's a lot of other things. Let's just take a rabbi. He gets paid to teach your child, right? Not that much. Rabbanim definitely deserve more. And teachers, but they get paid. But then there's also other things that could be done, like people can donate so that they could take their students somewhere, or they could do special prizes, or they could do other things, like, or let's take tutoring. If your son is getting ready for bar mitzvah, or even your daughter is for her bat mitzvah, are people like volunteering to spend an hour once a week with your child to help them? No, you're paying them. So and that goes across. So if someone really can't afford to be able to pay to get their bar mitzvah lessons, then hopefully someone in the community steps up and helps them. But nobody goes to the bar mitzvah lesson teacher or the teacher who's doing the bat mitzvah and expects, no, you should do everybody for free and you should be the one that doesn't have any parnasa. That's like, right? And same thing like coaching. It's like this concept of when you need coaching for a marriage, then people can pay, and no one's expected to do coaching for free. They're expected that they can get their $100 an hour or whatever else, which is completely reasonable. But when you're talking to them for shidduchim, for dating, that they should do for free because that's the mitzvah. Like, it's really nonsensical. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Again, it's based on a volunteer model, and when someone's volunteering, great, that is how it works. But that's not the expectation. So I love that you have really led the way, and there's definitely other people out there that also have professional models, definitely people who want to criticize them, saying they're only focused on wealthy people or whatever else. But I feel like, Rivka, you've done it completely different. You set a model that could be mainstream for so many people who want to go into shidduchim, who can have the talent that you have and be able to like really help people in such a beautiful way that's like sustainable. And like, I'm so excited about what else you're going to do. And like, I'm so behind you because I love the approach that you have. And I think let's talk about your success. Like, how many you have 4,000 people in your database. Like, how many people have you set up? Like, talk a little bit about your stats.
Okay, so I used to not say how many shidduchim, but my rabbi told me, he said, it's really important to let people know that you had success. So he encouraged me. I'm close to 50.
Wow. And not even that many years.
No, like since 2019.
Wow, 6 years, 50. That's amazing.
Not 50 yet,
close
but
to 50.
50.
Yep.
You can count them from here till here, people that are currently dating.
Oh, wow. Okay, I won't look because I don't want to see the names.
Here,
so you'll tell me. Give me an estimate.
We're at probably more than 50 couples that are
50 couples that are dating.
Yeah.
And you're supporting throughout this process.
So some more than others.
Yeah.
I started like even just bringing in my husband, who's super helpful. Like, I have 2 couples who reached like a roadblock recently, and there's just been so much going on right now. And I was just like, I felt the responsibility because I had set them up, and I didn't want to leave them hanging, but it was just more than what I can handle right now. So my husband's actually like speaking to someone's rebbe and calling someone else's rebbitzin and getting involved. And some of them, I'm not involved with at all right now. And they're like, we'll let you know what happens.
Well, I know I've told you, like, I think that there's the talent of thinking of ideas and getting people to go out in a comfortable way. And then there's the talent of helping them along the way. Totally. And I've always said, just focus on getting the new people in. And like, there's a lot of other people out there that could help them, like the rest of the process. Because you have to decide where you spend your effort. You can't do everything.
You really can't.
But so I also just want to ask about your approach. I know just from, again, working with you, how a lot of times people think shadchanim are really pushy, or like, and people like really like working with you, and you're just so different. And I think part of it is because you're younger and you're cute and you got your family, so of course like people like relate to that. I think they sometimes think of a shadchan as like someone who's not as relatable. So you're really changing that too. But like, what is it? Like, what's your approach that has been, you think, so successful? And also like, and then I want to talk about like how you think of these things.
I really think it's a gift from Hashem. Cliche as it sounds, it's siyata d'shmaya. Like, I really feel that it flows. Like, Hashem sends me ideas. Sometimes it's flowing, sometimes it's not flowing, and it could be taken away at any time. And I try and tap into that flow, and I use that energy when ideas come my way. I try not to put in too much effort or too much resistance, so like it can go with the siyata d'shmaya. And the same when couples are dating, I try to do hishtadlus, the amount of effort that I feel like is healthy and normal. And a guy will say, I want to end it now, and I say, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Do we feel like you really went through the whole process properly? You did? Okay, amazing. You should feel amazing knowing that you have clarity this isn't your basher. So I feel like trying to tap into the hashgacha, the flow, and just understanding, reminding myself always that whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. All the outcomes are like min shemayim, and then going with the natural current. So if someone doesn't want to go out with someone, it doesn't feel right to push too hard or to force, a circle into a square. And really, and at the same time, being open to things that are out of the box, because if it came into my mind and there was something that I saw, Hashem wanted me to think about that and trying it, even if it's not exactly what they said that they were looking for. So really trying to tap into the hashgacha.
What was the first person you set up?
He's now, I think it's called like Aram in like Yeshiva of Lakewood. And it was his first wife who passed away, but he had like 3 or 4 kids with her. She was my supervisor on a camp traveling program when I was 15 or 16 years old called DKTY, and she was my supervisor. And I told her that she should meet this guy that I knew who would come over and play music at our house while he was in yeshiva. And it was a crazy story, but they got married, and that was my first shidduch.
Okay, so did you think you would do this? Like, it was just something natural? Like, when you were in high school, when you were in college?
I was always connecting people, and I was like, you would love this person. And like, even like girlfriend shidduchs and job shidduchs, like I feel like I have a good sense of like who would like what and what people are interested in and what they go for and what would bother them.
And what did you major in college?
So I did my undergrad, like liberal arts online, humanities or whatever, and then I went to Penn for grad school education. After I got married to Rick, once we were on campus, I went, and then I took most of my classes in psych.
I know, it's like psychology also is such a big part of it. And that's too, it's like you also have an Ivy League education, and you could have chosen a lot of other things to do as a parnasa. And so that was, I remember when we had that conversation, I was like, value, like this is so huge. Like this is, again, a role model for other people, that this is an option and this is a career, and this is like it's a career that gives back to the community. It could be both, right? Like this can be both.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
And it doesn't take away from the kedusha, the holiness, the mitzvah, if it's something that's monetized in a way that makes it sustainable. It doesn't take away.
I love it. Okay, now I'm going to ask a couple questions. And what was one of the most difficult times in this process for you?
Okay, so it was about a year ago. I was actually Hanukkah. I was in Miami with my family. I had gone to do a big dating event there, and I was like, worked like crazy. Doing events takes everything, and I was with my kids. It was so hard, and I think I had like 4 engaged couples at the time, and something that I was grappling with, this was before I figured out the nuances of my business model, and it was before I had spoken to this high-level coach, but I knew that I had to do something, and I was in conversations with my rabbi, different mentors at the time, and they said, you know what? because I hadn't gotten like paid shadchanas and like the weddings were coming up, and it was the point where I'd already decided that like this wasn't sustainable, and it just really, really hurt me that I'm like, I have 4 couples engaged. I'm like burning myself out here in Miami. Like I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And the rabbis and the people that I spoke to, they were like, you know what? Just tell the people, call them up. Maybe they don't know. Tell them the idea of shadchanas. It's a halacha and shulchan aruch. Like, go for it. It literally, I felt like I was jumping off a cliff. That's how scary it was for me. And I was like, I'm just doing it. This is so not me, so not my personality. And so I called up the dad. Oh, no. I had called the dad of one of the guys who was engaged. And he told me he would reach back out to me at some point. I didn't say what it was about. And he reached back out to me when I was in Miami during this like crazy time. And I remember exactly where I was standing. My kids remember because I was sobbing. And I'm like standing there in the hallway of like, I don't know, this hotel. And he calls and he says, "Hi, you called me." This was our first interaction. Like I had set up his son and coached his son throughout the process. And
his son was engaged.
His son was engaged to be married. And like, that was not I was so taken aback. And I was like, "Hi, first of all, mazel tov, I just want to introduce myself." And like, you know, being all friendly. And it was just like flat on the other end, like monotone. "Yeah, it's mazel tov." And I said, you know, I feel so like uncomfortable bringing this up, but my rabbi said it would be good just to bring up the idea of shadchanas. I don't know if it's something that your community does, values, knows about. And he said, "Yes, I know what shadchanas is." And I felt like I was carrying the weight of the conversation. And he said, and I said, "Yeah, so I just wanted to bring it up." He said, "Well, you didn't sign anything with me ahead of time, and you didn't call me after they got engaged." And I was thinking, like, what? Like, they're supposed to call me? I was just so confused. So I said, like, "Look, if this is like a foreign idea for you, like, I'm not trying to mislead anyone or anything. Like, you could ask your rabbi about it, and like, if that's, you know, not something that you don't want to give shadchanas, but I'm not like making up something over here." And he said to me, "Oh, I spoke to my rabbi, and like my rabbi said like the flowers the couple sent were more than enough." And it sounded like very like kind of like defensive, angry. And I was like in this position where I was like, wait, I put so much time into this couple. I found them. They're people. Like, why do I feel like I did something wrong? Why do I feel like I'm in the principal's office in 10th grade? Like, it was so unsettling. And I went back to my rabbi about it. My rabbi was like, "Wow, like, let me reach out to that rabbi." No one was able to get through to him. It was very, very disheartening. And part of the leader conversation with that high-level coach, he was like, "Rivka, you realize like you can't expect, even if it's a cultural norm and a cultural expectation, you can't expect that people are going to pat you on the back after they get their work. People come in and they feel like they will do anything for you. If you find them in your person, they have their person, you know, you're not so relevant to them. You need to be able to make sure that you can take care of your family on the front end." And that's essentially what pushed me to do this.
So I remember, because I spoke to you after that call, and I was not surprised, but so disappointed. But I felt like people are good people. Do we have to work sometimes on like our gratitude and hakaras hatov? Absolutely. But I felt that there was like such a strong educational piece, because I've also had this conversation, because this is a topic that's so important. And this idea, even going back to, you know, we were talking about a business model where people are paying up front, but this idea that there are a lot of volunteer shadchanim. Again, they have a regular parnasa. They're doing it in their free time, which is so nice of them. And a lot of them, like, that's their mitzvah. Look, I host this podcast. This is my mitzvah. I don't want any money for it. That's how they are. I get that. And if somebody wanted to give me like, "Oh, I'm going to send you flowers," great. That's so nice of you. But please don't give me any money, because this is my mitzvah, which is a lot of shadchanim, and that's fine. So then only go to volunteer shadchanim if that's, but we need and want professional shadchanim that are setting up so many more people, that are so much more focused on it. And we need to recognize that we have to have that hakaras hatov, and that we have to be able to give shadchanas. And I felt like that there is a lack of education, the expectation that somebody spends so much time helping you with the most important, most difficult part, you know, of setting up your child and helping them find their person. And like, the amazing thing to me about the phone call was that there wasn't even a phone call. So I would just say to anybody, I don't care if someone's a professional shadchan or a volunteer shadchan or a rebbitzin or whatever else. When somebody does something for you or for your family, like acknowledging the karas hatov and thanking them and appreciating the fact that they spent their time to help you, like how far that goes. That would probably be, if that person said to you, like, thank you for, thank you so, they called you and said, thank you so much for setting up my kids.
World. I always tell my husband, I'm like, it's not about an amount of money. It's not about what the gift is. Someone writes me a handwritten card that they love what I did for them. And I set up like, bal teshuvas who like gave me, a not super expensive, whatever it is, and wrote me the most heartfelt card. Like those are the most precious shidduchim to me.
But this was like the way in which this tone was like, it was so sad, and it was really disappointing. And then I was thinking, okay, the greater opportunity here, and I think it's an educational one, and for people just to think differently. That's all. Like, think about it differently. And I hope you sharing your story about how much effort and how much time and the expectations that you have, and especially if you're someone who can afford to be able to give shadchanim extra, so that those who can't, right, they can help more, because they can only help with so many people. So, sometimes it's like, okay, how much did I spending on my wedding? And what percentage of that is appropriate to give the shadchan? Again, if you're using someone as a professional shadchan, how much, or if it's a volunteer shadchan, so then if that volunteer shadchan doesn't want the money, then donate that money to something that can help other people who need shidduchim, right? There's organizations and so many things, but everyone, I feel like, should have in mind that there's a percentage of what they're spending on their wedding they should either be giving to their shadchan, or they should be donating to an organization that helps others, because it's a mindset that we need to shift. And I really feel like, and I know in the yeshivish community, this is like absolute. Like, even if you don't have money, like absolute, like it's a given. But in the modern Orthodox community, it's not. And I really think it's the rabbanim within the modern Orthodox community that need to teach. They need to share. They need to educate their communities about the hakaras hatov and the importance, number one, of thanking their shadchan when they should be the ones to make the initial call and thank their shadchan for setting up their children. And number two is understanding that giving them shadchanas, and again, whether you're giving it directly to them or you're donating it to help others, it's a really important mitzvah. So I'm really hoping that the rabbanim that are listening to this are understanding the need to educate the modern Orthodox community in this area, because there are more and more kids in the modern Orthodox community that are getting older and older, and they're not finding their person, and we need to be able to bring more and more resources to be able to help them. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, next question for you. What's the single piece of advice that you would give people who are dating right now?
The single piece of advice would be to be the person that you're looking for. If you have a list of things that you're looking for in a spouse, in a partner, what are you bringing to the table? Does it match what you're looking for? And be a match for whatever it is that you're looking for.
That's a great piece of advice. What is the single thing you see? Is there a trend that certain people do that help them to be more successful in the dating process?
I think it's the things that make people more successful in life in general. Respecting everyone, gratitude to your date, gratitude to your matchmaker, checking in every now and then, or asking the matchmaker how frequently to check in, presenting one's best self, staying growth-oriented. I think all the things that make one successful in general.
Love it. Now, what is a single piece of advice that you would give to women in general?
I think really, really value your worth. You're worth so much more. Don't let anyone dictate who you are. If what you're doing is okay, if what you're doing pleases them, you set your worth, and people might like it, people might not, but value yourself to the nth degree. You
really put your life on Instagram, and I can appreciate how difficult that must be in a lot of, maybe it's, no, I'm going to restate that. You put your life, on Instagram, you share yourself with so many. Talk a little bit. Is that difficult for you? Like, what's that motivator? What are the sacrifices behind that?
So I I'm I'm an extrovert. I love to share. There's a part of it that I really, really enjoy. It's like I have a blog and people are watching and listening. It's kind of fun. It's a platform. I have a way that I can express who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing, and I'm not just, a matchmaker in Philadelphia on the other line of a phone. I feel like it gives color to who I am, and it's nice for people also to get to know the other side. I think also, especially as being a kiruv rebbitzin, that my husband is out there on campus and a lot of the students follow me just to see what my life is like. I'm a regular Orthodox Jewish woman. This is what it's like to raise kids, to have a profession, to have a fun house. A lot of these students spend time at our house on Shabbat and love it. It's also a great way to stay in touch because we've been at Penn now 11 years and these students come through in cycles, and then they're all over the world. They're in San Francisco and Seattle and abroad, and it's just such a great way to keep in touch. They comment on my stories, I comment back, I find out what people are up to, and I really enjoy it.
Is it hard with your kids?
Sometimes, and then I'll take a step back, put away my phone. Aliza will say, "Mommy, not for instance." I'm like, "Aliza, you're so right." But I think even pre-Instagram, I have that personality where I love and I enjoy sharing, and it's very, very natural for me. But yeah, definitely my kids don't always want to be in camera. Sometimes they love it, sometimes they don't. And trying to find the right balance is definitely something that I'm working on.
I find because you guys are in kiruv, I find it so beautiful that you share the joy of living, an observant life. I that's the lens that I watch your Instagram is wow, you're really showing the model of how beautiful a Torah life can be.
Thank you. That's so nice.
So what would you say is your superpower?
Being a connector.
For sure, right? Connection of all things. It's awesome. What would you tell your younger self?
Rivka, it's going to be okay. There are certain moments that I think back to times when I really, really struggled earlier on in life, whether it was high school, post-high school, really dark moments where I was just oh my gosh, life is really, really hard. And and you feel the weight of how's it going to be good? Who am I going to marry? Where am I going to live? What's my life going to be like? I have to have it all figured out. And I was one of those people who thought about those things and would kind of worry, and if things weren't going well, and I'd feel the stress, my life, I'm just going to be one of those people who are just, sad or lonely. And I think that I wish I could have just told myself, Hashem really takes care of everyone. I couldn't have dreamed that I would be able to use my skills of being a connector to be able to have such a meaningful career now. And I never imagined I'd be living in Philadelphia near a college campus. And I think really just the understanding Hashem's going to take you where you need to be.
What was your best moment when you think back?
On life in general?
Yeah.
Maybe the day I got my driver's license.
Really?
Oh gosh. So basically my family moved to Israel while I was in high school. It was always on the radar, and we had a home in Israel and my family would stay for vacations. And one summer they basically just stayed, and I had the choice to come to Israel or to finish up high school, but it was more okay, obviously, Rivka, you're going to finish up high school in America. It didn't make sense for me to come. And I think just the loneliness and not having autonomy was so hard for me. I counted down the days. I remember the joy I felt. It was not normally liberating.
I'll tell you, I was a boarder in high school in Chicago.
So you know what it's like.
And I always had to ask everyone else for rides, and I didn't have
worst.
parents to be able to ask. So the day I got my driver's license was
And my family's car was still there. I had a car, and I couldn't drive it. And once I got my license, I basically moved into my car.
My 15-year-old who's counting down, she's just said to me, she's like, "Why did you have to have me in April instead of earlier? I have to wait so long to get my license." She can't wait to get her license.
How could you do
I know,
that
it's
to her?
at that moment. That's so cute. What's your message to the women and girls that are really good at setting people up, but they realize they can't do that full time. They have to make a parnasa. What's your message to them?
My message is, you got this. There are so many different industries out there, and own it. Use your skills. I feel like Hashem wants people to do this, and Hashem will give success where people are doing His work, His will, and totally go for it.
Okay. All right. We're wrapped.
This episode was made possible by our friends at Roth & Co. We are grateful for their continued partnership. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you'll join us for the next one. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch this conversation on YouTube, so be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until we meet again, stay inspired to lead.